Welcome to every Roman emperor in 8 minutes. I'm Jack, and we'll begin with Augustus, who, although technically just a senator, held the power of high priest, consul, and dictator. He also established the Praetorian Guard, which will be important later in the Pax Romana, which is a long period of peace and prosperity throughout the empire. Tiberius is known for his expansion of the Roman territory and the treasury, and his hatred of the Senate. Caligula promoted tax and judicial reforms, but he did a lot of bad things, which unfortunately I cannot say in this video, but you can look up. Claudius overcame his disability of cerebral palsy, expanded the empire into Britain, and fought for the rights of enslaved people and women. The good things Nero did were the expansion of infrastructure and art, although he did so many bad things that he was convicted by his own Senate. But keep in mind, this isn't the first or last time a leader gets convicted by the Senate. Nero didn't have any sons. Galba became the first non-Julio Claudian emperor. Although he just tried to restabilize the empire, he was hated by and killed by his own troops. And so we get to the year of the four emperors in 69, or the head of Galba's army, Otho, who was of Greek descent and a friend of Nero's, kills him. And then he gets killed by Vitellius, who lived luxuriously and was killed by Vespasian. He ruled for barely any time and didn't really do anything notable. Now, Vespasian founded the Flavian dynasty, restabilized the empire, and built the Colosseum. Titus provided aid to the victims of Mount Vesuvius. He finished the Colosseum, and he was just an overall effective ruler, although he did sack the Temple of Jerusalem. Domitian increased the treasury and was loved for it, expanded the territory, and was too powerful, so he was killed by the Senate. Nerva was the founder of the Nerva-Antonine dynasty, and he was the first good emperor of that dynasty. He gave back power to the Senate, but he now wasn't powerful enough and was killed by the army. Trajan was proclaimed the best emperor ever by the Senate, probably because he expanded the territory to its greatest extent. He also built a lot of infrastructure, such as the Roman baths, aqueducts, and Trajan's Arch. And just as reference, here is the Roman territory under Trajan. Pretty impressive. Hadrian was another good emperor, responsible for architectural advancements and increased border security, although he did do some questionable things, but unfortunately there isn't enough time to talk about them. Antoninus Pius was another good emperor, who was known for being very peaceful and also expanding administrative reforms such as public relief. Marcus Aurelius co-ruled with Lucius Verus, who led many military campaigns, lived luxuriously, and died in 169. Marcus Aurelius, on the other hand, was a philosopher whose writings are still widely read today. He defended the empire from threats, and he was the last of the 5 good emperors. Commodus liked to dress up as Hercules and pretend that he was a gladiator. He also did a lot of R-rated things that I cannot describe in this video, and he single-handedly ended the Pax Romana. He was eventually convicted by the Senate. 193 was the year of the 5 emperors, where Pertinax, Commodus' successor, suddenly dies, and Didius Julianus buys the throne. He then gets ousted by Septimius Severus, who was then threatened by Pescennius, who was then killed by a tag team of Septimius Severus and Clodius Albinus. But then Clodius Albinus himself is killed by Septimius Severus, leaving Septimius Severus as our winner. He rules for another 18 years. So after Septimius Severus dies, his 2 sons, Caracalla and Geta, co-ruled together. However, Geta was murdered by Caracalla less than a year into his reign. Caracalla, on the other hand, was notable for issuing the Edict of Caracalla, which extended citizenship to all free men in the empire. So now we approach the 3rd century crisis, and although it doesn't technically begin until 235, you can start to begin seeing some pretty clear signs. Macrinus was known for being the first emperor that wasn't from the senatorial class. He tried to reform the military, but unfortunately he was murdered before he could complete the job. Elagabalus then took the throne as a teenage emperor. He made Commodus look like a mentally sane person, and remember our old friends the Praetorian Guard? They murdered him. Severus Alexander was another teenage emperor who actually tried to do well and restore peace and order, but as you guessed, he was murdered. Maximinus Thrax was known for his military prowess, promotion of border security, and apparently was over 8 feet tall. And now for the year of the 6 emperors. Maximinus Thrax was threatened by the Gordians, but in a miraculous turn of events, he vanquished both of them. But then he was killed by a tag team of Pupienus and Balbinus. And then Gordian III comes along and he's like, hey, can I join you guys? And they're like, sure. So then the 3 of them ruled together for a bit, and then Pupienus and Balbinus are mysteriously killed by the Praetorian Guard, leaving Gordian III as our winner. He rules for another 6 years. Philip the Arab negotiated peace with Persia, celebrated Rome's millennium, and then was murdered. Decius, who co-ruled with his son Herennius Etruscus, persecuted Christians and fought the Goths, and although he initially succeeded, was killed by them. Now for a triple co-rule, Trebonianus Gallus tried to restabilize the empire but was murdered. Hostilian ruled for 1 month before he was murdered, and Volosianus, the son of Trebonianus Gallus, was murdered. Despite what his name may sound like, Aemilian only ruled for 3 months, didn't really do much in that time, and was murdered. Gallienus co-ruled with his father Valerian, who fought Persians, was captured by them, and then died. Gallienus, on the other hand, tried to defend the empire and had a relatively long reign. Claudius Gothicus got his title from killing Goths. He was famous for the Battle of Nisus and unfortunately died from plague. Quintillus, his brother, lost the office of high priest and unfortunately was murdered by Aurelian. Aurelian led a series of military victories that single-handedly saved the empire. He fortified it and then was murdered by the Praetorian Guard. Tacitus, Aurelian's lead senator, was elected emperor by the Senate and unfortunately died of plague. He also slayed Goths, which was all the rage at that time. Florianus, who was Tacitus' stepbrother, was also elected by the Senate, and he was such a boring person that he was murdered. Probus, one of the people that killed Florianus, promoted stability and expansion, but was murdered. Carus tried to restabilize the empire by fighting off Rome's enemies and died mysteriously. Numerian, Carus' son, co-ruled with his brother Carinus, who dealt with rebellions and unfortunately was murdered by his own troops. Meanwhile, Carinus dealt with problems in the east and, like his father, had a mysterious death. Diocletian, one of Carinus' generals, established the Tetrarchy, a form of co-ruling which restabilized the empire, but he persecuted Christians. And just to show you as a reference, here is the Roman Empire under Diocletian's Tetrarchy. The 3rd century crisis ends in 285, but let's take a look at the stats for the 3rd century overall. So we had 31 emperors, of which 19 were murdered, and only 5 ruled for more than 5 years, compared with the 2nd century, where we had 13 emperors, only 4 were murdered, and 8 ruled for over 5 years. Constantine, known as Constantine the Great, converted to Christianity, moved the capital to Constantinople, and issued the Edict of Milan, which allowed religious tolerance within the empire. Paranoid Constantius II purged his family, spent time dealing with usurpers, and also fought Persians. Constantine's nephew Julian, who survived Constantius II's purge, tried to ban Christianity but was killed by Persians. Jovian, the head of Julian's personal guard, unbanned Christianity and also made peace with the Sassanid Persian Empire. Theodosius was the last emperor of both the eastern and western halves of Rome. He converted the empire to Christianity and made peace with the Goths, and then permanently split the empire into east and west. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, I kindly ask you to please like, subscribe, and share the video. I have been Jack, and I'll see you in the next one.